Hello and welcome back to the Rope Access and Climbing Podcast YouTube edition. I'm your host, Mikey Stevenson, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about handrails, otherwise known as guardrails as well. If this is your first time here, please make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. So stay tuned. Step into your harness and get ready for a podcast about the vertical world. All right, well, let's dive into today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we are talking about handrails or guardrails, whatever you kind of want to call them. Now, there's going to be a couple different scenarios that I am going to, show you as well, talk to you about. Now, I'm sorry, but working in the field, don't have the ability to take photos. So my buddy Sam is a absolute genius when it comes to a V-rigger. So I got him to kind of do me a favor here, and also do a favor for all of you and kind of draw up a couple different scenarios in V-rigger, and we're going to dive into those and talk about them. All right. So, on this job, what kind of sparked my attention here is a couple individuals have asked questions about rigging to, around, over, under handrails. And, not really understanding, if you're allowed to. Obviously, a lot of individuals have told them that you're not allowed. And for myself, I'm just kind of refreshing that, is it or is it not okay? And, doing a risk assessment and talking to them about analyzing the risk and analyzing what they're doing. So what I want to talk about is kind of breaking down these kind of misconceptions, if you will. And, maybe shine some light on it yourself. Now, one thing that I have to put out there, I've been trying to find this information, and please let me know in the comments below. Share the link if you get a better answer than this. I have been trying to find the required strength for handrails or guardrails in Alberta, Canada. Unfortunately, all I can stumble across is they need to be rated for 200 pounds in any force, about 2 or 3 inches from any vertical section. Now, 200 pounds for a handrail requirement seems pretty low. So this is where I'm kind of trying to dig in and find it for industrial purposes or whatever. For some unknown reason, right now, I've always kind of went off of the 700 pound rating. This is maybe even an old rating, and they've just kind of updated it to 200 pounds. So, like I said, if you know where I can find that information and, it's OH&S requirements, please let me know in the comments below. That would be muchly appreciated. So, going off that, we have to understand that handrails are rated for 200 pounds in any direction. That weight could be applied to them about 2 or 3 inches from any vertical section. So that's step one. Okay. Make sure that you inspect all the connections. Are they welded connection, bolted connections, etc., and make sure that the handrail or guardrail that you're trying to rig over or through is in good working condition. Okay, give it a good solid hee-ho, right? Kind of make sure that it's not going to, fall apart on you. Obviously goes into that aspect of just risk assessing the situation. Okay. Next up is, can you go over the handrail, over the top rail, or do you have to go over the mid rail? And obviously never go over the toe board. Obviously a sharp edge, right? So no matter what you're doing, try to avoid going over the toe board unless, of course, you have some sort of a hard barrier that you'd never have to worry about the ropes getting damaged going over that toe board. All right, so kind of getting that stuff basically out of the way. All right, so I'm going to show a few different scenarios and talk about, which ones are good or are they acceptable, that kind of thing. So, all right, so this one here, we're rigged up with the control descent devices or anchors back a couple feet from the handrail, giving us a 60-degree bend over that top rail. All right, so is this acceptable? Is this not? Not that this is an acceptable, unacceptable episode, but this is something that is probably pretty common, or someone has seen something rigged up similar to this. Okay, so we'll kind of keep that in the back of our mind here for a second. All right, so now we have this one where it's rigged up right at the bottom, kind of right by the toe boards, and up and over directly over top of the top rail. Now, is this okay? Well, the difference here is, yes, rigging the anchors or the control descent devices directly at the toe board will apply 200% on the top rail. Yes, it's more weight than the other option. However, it doesn't have any lateral pulling on it. So the further the descent devices go out, more lateral pulling on that handrail. Handrails are generally not designed for lateral pulling, lateral loading, and they're obviously stronger in the vertical orientation. Okay, not saying you can't do either or, but do keep in mind that when you're rigging over top of the top rail, you want to make sure that you're kind of minimizing that lateral movement. Okay, so going up and over top in this circumstance is definitely the better option. All right. And this is a very common thing to see if you're, say, working on a side of a structure or going down a side of a vessel and you're rigging onto that top platform and you just need to get down there. You don't have anything higher than what you're already standing on. So the highest point there, unless you're working with some company that has a high directional, like a Vortex tripod or anything like that, obviously that'd be the better option. But I don't know many rope access companies that do have those items for general purpose like this. So like I said, going back, yes, I understand that rigging right at the toe board is applying more weight to the handrail, but as long as you're rigging as close to or not in line with the vertical sanction of it, it's actually quite strong in that orientation. But make sure that you're inspecting everything. Okay, now we have this option here. Okay, so rig back quite a ways back, and you decide to rig an extension from the top rail down over top of the toe board. So it's picking it up a couple inches, maybe a foot off there. Now, one question right here is, does it have to be a single or does it have to be a double deviation? Yes, this is technically directional or a deviation. So in this case, it absolutely 100% has to be doubled up. Okay, if that single sling failed, those ropes would fall down on the toe board and you would have a dual line failure without question. So absolutely must be doubled up at all times. Now, what's happening here? Let's talk about the physics of this. What we've done is went off the top rail and directionally created the load to be as low as possible, just going over that toe board a couple inches. Okay, so the handrail is being pulled straight down, not laterally. And yes, we're applying a little bit less force than going over top of the handrail. So if we're going over the top of the handrail, we're maybe applying 150, maybe 160% to that handrail. And keep in mind, laterally as well. Here you're pulling straight down and only applying about 140% to that handrail. So this is something to consider when we're looking at situations like this. This gives us the ability to, use the handrail in its strongest configuration, but also give us access to those ropes from the top down. Okay. This also gives us the ability, set up like this, you can rig it up on IDs pretty easily, put some pulleys there, and just lower out pretty easily as well, and avoiding that toe board sharp edge. Okay. Now, obviously, we don't want to do this where it's rigged up in the middle of the handrail. Obviously, right in the middle of those two vertical sections, this is the weakest point of that handrail. So definitely avoid doing anything like this if you can. But yet again, make sure that you have both slings rigged up as a double. All right. And I don't have a photo of it here, but a question came to me about this subject from an individual on site was, are you allowed to rig to handrails like a deviation? Can you deviate off handrails? And the question I have there in relation to this was, at what point do you require a single or double deviation? What's the requirements for the deviation strengths? So a single deviation is for positioning only. So if that single sling fails or whatever you're attached to fails, you swing out, there's no harm. Okay, yes, it sucks. You got to figure out how to get back to where you were. But at the end of the day, no harm, no foul. So if you're just rigging a single deviation, yes, technically speaking, it's totally fine. However, a lot of company policies and procedures, site requirements will not allow you to physically create some sort of anchor off a handrail. So I would highly recommend avoiding using the handrails of any kind as some sort of a deviation. It will add a lot more questions to the situation than you're probably looking for. Now, for a double deviation, it's an absolute no. You cannot rig unless the handrails you're working on in the facility you're working are rated for 3,600 or 5,000 pounds, whatever your local legislation is. But in this circumstance, for a double deviation, the anchorage has to meet or exceed a minimum of 16 kilonewtons. 16 kN is a Alberta OHS regulation, by the way. 15 kN for IRATA. Okay. Yeah. So if you're rigging to whatever anchorage, okay, it has to meet that. So in this case, if a handrail is rated for 200 pounds or 700 pounds, whichever that number actually is, it falls way, way short of that requirement. So you could not use it as a double deviation. Okay. And yeah, so that's kind of all I got today. So just kind of diving into handrails is kind of something that we're bound to use, kind of going up, over, through, out there in the world. So just kind of shine some light on the conversation. All right. So thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you're doing out there in the field when it comes to handrails in the comments below. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications as I put out new content every Sunday. And I'll see you on the next one.